Blog Talk Radio.
Yo, what's up, world? It's badass thuggin' like I usually do. And you better turn it up, bust some speakers out, cause we off the motherfucking cuff. You dig how we do it? Dog Pound Gangsters 2000 and beyond.
Yeah, this is Cassidy, the hustler. And right now, you listening to the Guillotine. Show them the respect they deserve, man. Off the cut radio, man. Y'all already know how they doing it, man. I need y'all to stay tuned. They've been doing it for years, so show them the respect they deserve. And you heard it out of bars, mouth. Easy.
Keep it moving like this. Yo, this your boy Rampage. You're not rocking with the best. With Off the Cuff Radio. Classic. History. Fix your face to all you haters. We off the cuff, baby.
Y'all is the Queen of Trap representing Crenshaw, and you are now tuned in with Off the Cuff Radio. What's up?
What's up, y'all? This is Miss Irresistible, giving a shout out to the live show on Friday night, Off the Cuff Radio. And I'm live from the 704. Make sure y'all tune in for the blazing hot music.
What it is, what it ain't, what it do. It's Chili Chill from that original Lynch mob. And Off the Cuff Radio is always where it's at on Friday nights. West, y'all.
Alrighty then, we are episode 491 on the countdown to 500. I am your host, King Eric, the media assassin, and this is Off the Cuff Radio, man. Sponsored by Fleetwood and the Cotton Pickers, sponsored by Buddy Boy Entertainment, Jesse's Team, Core Financial. I got my host T-Max with the facts on the line.
What it do, y'all. Friday Night Fantasticness, Off the Cuff in the building. We are live and direct. Shout out to our co-host of Spirit, Alana Sandman, Lee Chinchilla, and of course, Pittsburgh Pat. We ready to get it going and rocking. You know what it do, y'all.
Man. Yes, sir, man. And you know, Pat gonna probably be a little late on the check-in. He got on a mini accident, so hopefully he'll be able to check in. But he told me he gonna definitely check in on it. But nevertheless, man, we got a dope artist on the line, man. This guy put out 2 major records that set the globe on fire, man. Talk about
Absolutely.
This is why I'm hot. I mean, I'm talking about this record here. Had everybody in the club going, man. And he's making different moves outside of the industry for what I'm observing. And he's here to talk about these new major acquisitions and moves that he's making. So we got him on the line, man. Let's welcome MIMs to Off the Cuff Radio, man. What's good?
What it do, man?
What up, fellas, man? How y'all feeling, man? What's the good word?
MIMs, this is an honor and a privilege, man. The creator of one of the all-time legendary, classic, timeless pieces of hip-hop that will forever be embedded in the consciousness of the culture. This is huge for us, man. Thank you for coming on.
No, thank you guys for having me, and giving me a platform to speak on, man. Much appreciated. And, congratulations to you guys on the show and pushing the culture forward, as I like to say.
Man, look, Mims, we appreciate that so much. Your story and our stories are pretty intertwined from the level of perseverance, hard work, dedication, tenacity, and overcoming obstacles set in the way. Your story is one of inspiration and triumph, and it's, in its genesis to the greatness that you've achieved and to, where you are at right now. I guess we start from the beginning of it. I mean, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you found music to be your savior, and because you got a lot of stuff moving that a lot of people don't know about that we got a couple hours, so we want to get to all of it, man. So, I mean, we get right to it. Let's do it.
That's what's up. Yeah, man, no, so, I mean, first and foremost, for those who are listening out there, man, shout out to y'all. On this Friday night, I go by the name of MIMs. The biggest record, obviously, I've released in my career is a record called This Is Why I'm Hot, sometime in 2006. That topped the charts in 2007. Brought me around the world, allowed me to see life from a different perspective and you know, to feed my family while doing it. So I got my early start in my childhood. I started off as a DJ, and you know, I got into DJing, and then eventually into production and writing, and that would lead me into, you know, the artist that I would become. But my early start was kind of unique because you know, my mother and father had passed away, but when I was 11, my father passed away. When I was 13, my mother passed away. But right before my mom passed away, she actually purchased me two turntables and a mixer. And then maybe a couple months later, she passed away, unfortunately. But as a young 13-year-old, being left in the world with no parents, I kind of like dived into music as a refuge, right? So that was like my place to go to get away from everything that was happening in my life. So for me, it was important not only just to use music as a way to just cope, as a coping mechanism, but also I wanted to learn how to create it. So I've literally learned how to create music from the inside out. So I have the ear of a DJ from my early childhood days, and then I obviously got into production, and then I started doing the writing side, and eventually it led me into being my own artist. So I've kind of been away from the mic for a long time, so I don't usually consider myself just an artist. I'm obviously in the pursuit of being an entrepreneur in the tech space, but music has definitely been that thing that created all these ancillary avenues for me.
Yo, Mims, this is Pittsburgh Pat, man. I'm the one that emailed you. I'm the one that booked you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it, man. I just want to give you a little bit of a heads up, man. I was kind of on my way home, man, and somebody ran a stop sign, man, and T-boned me, bro. I got hit, man. I'm kind of messed up. I'm like, kind of, if I hang up abruptly, man, please just talk to my co-host, man. I got a broken arm, man, and my arm's really messed up right now. Ooh. But yeah, so I just want to make you aware of that, man, just in case. Yeah, I'm just trying to remain professional here, man, and you know, so if I hang up abruptly, man, that just means like I have to talk to the police and stuff. You know what I mean? But
got it.
But man, I really,
I'm happy you're safe. Like I'm happy you're able to speak. Because a lot of people don't make it out of those situations. Okay.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's a Friday night, man, and you know, dude that hit me, man, he's all right and stuff. He's on the phone with his people and stuff. Like, we're all right. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble or anything. You know, he messed up, man. I don't hate him or nothing, man. I made plenty of mistakes too, man. He made a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I just wanted to put that out there, man, just in case I ask you a question and then I like hang up abruptly. Like, I just want you to be aware of that. But
you got it, bro.
But Mims, man, I really appreciate you coming on, man, because like what sparked me reaching out to you, man, is like I was actually like having a conversation online with somebody, and I got offended because they didn't respect what you accomplished. They didn't respect what you did. They you know, they looked at you as a one-hit wonder, man. I don't look at you as like that. I just really don't, man. And that's not me, like, because I'm telling you, that's the reason why I reached out to you, is because I don't look at you like that.
Yeah.
I personally, I understood what you did with This Is Why I'm Hot. You showed that you're of the culture by sampling something from each region and subgenre. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You included that in each song, and I think that you kind of like, I don't really know the right way to put it, but like you were just kind of showing like, look, I don't gotta be lyrical and I can have a hit record. This is some bullshit because I'm a lyrical dude. Because you are a lyrical dude, and that's what like, and I just kind of felt like from the jump, like people didn't understand like the what you were trying to accomplish with that song.
Yep.
And then they because I mean, to be honest, now I was locked up when that song came out, and I had already known who you were. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You used to go by Mr. MIMs. Is that correct?
Way back in the day, absolutely. That's correct.
Okay. I heard you on some kind of mixtape, man. I had a homie from Canada, man. He was from Toronto, and I cannot remember the name of this mixtape for the life of me, but you were on this mixtape, and I just recognized your voice when that song came out. But do you know what I'm talking about? Were you on a Canadian mixtape?
It was a Canadian mixtape. It was a Canadian Private Party Collector's Edition Volume 2.
That's exactly what it is.
Sound Crew.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when This Is Why I'm Hot came out, I recognized your voice, and I'm like, man, this dude sounds familiar. And then when I heard your name, I was like, yeah, that has to be the same guy. Yeah, it just has to be. You know what I mean? I recognize him. But I was like, man, this guy, I mean, I kind of felt like you were making that song in spite of, look how, I don't even got to try, and this is going to be a hit record, and it was. And I just thought that you got, an unfair shake because people just didn't get what you were doing, and they, labeled you as, a one-hit wonder before it was even really a hit even. You know what I mean? While it was on its way up, people just kind of, they jumped to a conclusion of what you were, and I was like, man, that's not fair, man. And then when your album came out, and then I actually kind of paid attention to you, man, and man, you done songs with real MCs like Redman, KRS-One, Bun B, and you didn't slack on those joints. You didn't slack on those joints. You weren't some. You held your own weight on all those joints, and so I just. I was like, look, man, the whole point of me having this show is to people,
to give a platform.
No,
I appreciate that. I'm going to explain the origins of. I'm going to explain the origins of This Is Why I'm Hot, so a lot of people understand. And I've said it consistently in a lot of interviews, from even way back when I first created the record. I was sitting in my apartment in Jamaica, Queens. At the time, I was renting the attic space of a family, my sister's father's home. And my manager at the time came in with this beat CD of all these Southern style records. And at the time, there were a lot of records on the radio that were really more club friendly and a lot less lyrically driven. And I remember he handed me the CD, and I was like, I listened through the tracks, and the tracks were pretty dope. But the way I was approaching those records at the time was I wanted to be super lyrical on a Southern track, just to show that you can add that type of flavor to a Southern track, i.e. the likes of the Outkast, of people in that vein. Obviously, you mentioned Bun B, but we go back to the Ghetto Boys and having that ability to be lyrical. And I was I started actually. It's funny because one of the tracks I played, I got super lyrical, and then my manager laughed, and he was like, "You can't do that." And I was like, "Well, how about I just freestyle?" And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "This is why I'm hot," and I couldn't think of nothing else after that, so I just kept saying it over and over again, and eventually that would become the hook. This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot. This is why. This is why. And if you think about my first line, I say, "This is why I'm hot. I don't got to rap. I can sell a mill saying nothing on the track." So
exactly,
I was saying that because at the time in hip hop, I felt like that's all that was going on. There was really no substance in the music, so I kind of just poking a little bit of fun at it. And it's funny because the same fun that I poked at it, that became the record of my career that took off. So it was almost like a gift and a curse. The gift is that the world gets to hear me. The curse is that the first record that they hear from me, they assume that that's who I am and that's my style. And it was really hard, even sitting with the label, trying to convince them that wasn't necessarily who I was. Now I love the record and I appreciate that record, and I respect the record, but when I tried to deliver new music, even to my record label at the time, they didn't even understand what kind of artist I was, and they were kind of confused at what lane I wanted to go down.
And that's all.
I
So,
get
you know.
Go ahead. I don't want to cut nobody off. Go ahead.
It's okay. Yeah, man. And that's always a tricky thing when you get into the game of music, because especially when you talk about the time that you came in the mid-2000s, when you made that entry. So we're looking at we got to think about within that 2005 to 2007, 2009 era. So you're looking at Jeezy, Jim Jones, Soulja Boy, Shop Boys, Crime Mob. We're looking, like you said, all the party rap. It was not necessarily, like you said, lyrically driven, and bar heavy, but more about just having a good time. So when you came in, you were coming in when hip-hop was at a certain aesthetic, and you fit in lovely with it. But like anything, like being it's like what you were saying, Mims, is like a comparison to an actor in terms of when they get typecast because they excel in such a lane that everybody sees them in a certain capacity of performance, but doesn't understand that while they see you as good as performing in that lane, that's not the peak of your talent or your creative powers. And that's always something, especially when so much money gets made, commercial success and everything, that a lot of them, especially when you're dealing with corporate entities, they don't always understand you have to grow to expand on that creativity and, make more because of it.
Yeah, I mean, think about this, right? And this is why the hip hop culture is such a interesting culture, right? Because we still debate the top 5 rappers, right? We know that when you talk about a Jay-Z and the likes of a Nas, that there's really no comparison because they don't rap the same, but we still debate whether who's better than the other. And both brothers have basically single-handedly done more for the culture as artists and businessmen than anyone can do, but we still have that debate. And I think what happens with hip-hop, especially because we're talking about something that came out of the 70s, right? So we're still fairly, we're not, it's not an old culture, is that because of how the origins of hip-hop was created, everybody feels the need to have an opinion on what music, what it is, where it derives from, and who can create it. I find it interesting, right? Because it's a really interesting debate. Like we could talk about my style of music and what I grew up listening to compared to the newer age and what's out today. And I find that a lot of people have problems with what we hear today because of what was delivered back in the day. So I feel like this is just a culture where, rock and roll, they don't do it. Even pop music, they don't do it. I mean, Vanilla Ice, as much as people could consider him a quote-unquote one-hit wonder, his record has surpassed decades and generations.
Yes.
And that's so I think
what I was about to say about you. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. I apologize for cutting you off, but I wanted to get that through to you that's the one thing that I hope that you appreciate, that any time that beat comes on for This Is Why I'm Hot, people that don't listen to hip-hop music know that song. Even if they don't know who sings it or whatever, they know that record. And I don't know if you understood that that's what you were doing at the time, but congratulations on that, man, because there's only a handful of records that are like that people that listen to country music, that listen to rock music, and, they just go to parties and stuff, but when that song comes on, they know that song, and they know the words, they know everything about it, and that's very hard to do, and I hope that you're proud of that, because that's a rare accomplishment that a lot of people don't get to make. I mean, the biggest rappers in the world, absolutely, they don't have that one record that exceeds hip hop, that goes, that beyond just people listen to rap. You went beyond hip hop with that record, man. It's kind of like, I always compare, I always give Juvenile credit because Back That Ass Up was like the new Baby Got Back. For people that don't listen to rap, they know that song. They know that song. And like your record is very similar to that. People that don't listen to rap, they might not even know who made the song, but when they hear that record, that's more important than $1 to me, you know.
King Pat Mills, when they got that ad lib said Cash Money take it over for the 99 and 2000.
That's a classic line, you know. and you know, and this is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot. That's on the same level as that. People that do not listen to rap music will sing along to that song. They might not even care who raps it or anything, but that's kind of what makes it even more special. The fact that like people that aren't your fans and aren't your demographic know a song that you made 15, 16 years ago, and that song will live forever. And you think about how many people freestyled over that beat and put it on their mixtapes and all that, like, because that's the era you came up in too, like where everybody was making mixtapes too. Man, there's a million people that freestyled over that beat. That beat's a classic, famous beat.
Wayne will rap over that beat.
Yeah. So like
the dope thing about
you know. Go ahead.
Yeah, the dope thing about the record, I would say, is that it you know, even now, even today, like I get my streaming reports, and I'm basically pushing 1 million, probably 1.5 million, maybe 2 million streams a month consistently with my body of work, and obviously this is why I'm hot. Is at the lead of that, and what I realize is that because of technology and where we are with technology, music is living forever. Like so, like even for myself, like there was a period in my career where I was super hot, no pun intended. You know, I was on the road every day for years, pretty much, and then I decided to get off the road, and you know, you start to see like the price of the show go down, or you know, certain things, and then now all of a sudden, even pre-pandemic and after the pandemic, I realized that there's like this generation. I don't know if it's considered Gen Z or the baby boomers, but that still want that era of music, that 2000, early 2000s into the late 2000s era of music, and they're paying to see these artists in concert. So the record is taking on a new life, even 15 years after releasing it, which I think is amazing, because it just shows how powerful music really is. And you know, that's not just because I did the record. I feel like that about it, like you said, Juvenile back to NASA, you know, DMX,
Party Up.
If it's on and it's on and I got to know now, is you with me? I mean, Party Up.
Damn.
So,
I mean, and that's a perfect segue. That's a perfect segue for later in the conversation, though, because you've also endeavored on a technological pursuit as well, and we want you to talk about that as well in terms of what you moved into in the next part of your career. Now, when we take it back to the beginning, Washington Heights, where you were from, also home of Cardi B, Alice Rodriguez, and Manny Ramirez. So you come from royalty there already. What was it like growing up there, and especially, you know, watching the hip-hop culture there that would influence you as you went along?
Yeah, so Washington Heights is a really, like, interesting place in New York, right? So it sits right above Harlem, right above Harlem, kind of right below the Bronx. So it's literally right in between, and the cultural influence in Washington Heights right now to this day is still Dominicans, right? So it's a really heavily Latino influenced neighborhood. And if you go down, you know, 20 blocks south of where I grew up, then you got Harlem. That's where, you know, we talk about the Rich Porters and the Alpos and the AZs, and you know, you talk about the Dipsets and the Dame Dashers and people who came from.
Can't forget Pee-wee Kirkland.
It's literally
Pee-wee Kirkland too.
There you go. So I think Washington Heights was nestled in between these areas. Now, here's a unique thing about Washington Heights. And I know this is not anything to be proud of, but this is just the truth. Washington Heights was where everyone went to pick up their drugs, right? So I don't care if you was Jay-Z, the Dipset, or whoever. Every time you hear them rap about something, about the drug culture, they had to come through the Heights. So anyone who in New York was moving weight or pushing weight, they had to basically come through that neighborhood. So this one neighborhood held a lot of power amongst everyone else, because that was where everyone's connect was. And you hear it in a lot of people's songs today. Even when Jay-Z said, I met Poppy on 145th and Broadway, because he understood that's where you came to get it. And when you talk about the influence that the drug culture has on the hip hop culture, I feel like that conversation wouldn't exist without Washington Heights being put into that conversation. And that's not I know that's not the best brand, but the reason why I say it is because there were so many people who came around the neighborhood.
Right. And when you talk about it, turns out being far
and there were so
from,
many artists.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying there were so many artists that came to that neighborhood before they became who they were. And you could essentially check someone, you could pull someone's G card to see whether or not they were telling the truth. So when I listen to people's lyrics and they start to make reference of the Heights, I feel like that's because they knew that that's where they had to kind of go to gain a right to passage. So and without that lifestyle, a lot of them wouldn't have been able to trickle into the music lifestyle, right? Because you needed that money that you made from that lifestyle to pour it into the music industry. So there's a lot of influence from that standpoint. I know I ran into a tangent, but I want to bring it back.
No, it's
for
okay.
me growing up, that's really all.
Please, because you're telling us history.
Yes.
MIMs, you're telling us history that are intimate history. And before we go on, you mentioned Harlem. We got to say rest in peace, of course, to DJ K-Slay, a good friend of mine. Once again, I mean, that's like
absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, but no, Mims, you are fine. You are fine because I don't think people really understand the significance of like what you said in terms of the cachet that Washington Heights holds in terms of the street strength. It's like you said, if you were somebody and you were getting money or you were really trying to root yourself in the game of music, that was one of the stomping grounds you had to go to in terms of being certified as authentic. Like, that's one of the hoods. And, of course, New York, hip-hop we know really as it started was in the Bronx. But, of course, you look at Brooklyn, you look at Queens. Of course, Washington Heights is in Manhattan. Of course, you got that in the Lower East Side, LES. Shout out True Life, of course, representing Lower East Side. It's like the culture, the history that it holds. Because this is how we gotta break it down in terms of it for everybody. The Bronx is the hard rock. Shout out to Hull Street, Decatur, 141st and Cypress, Soundview. Harlem, you got 125th, Malcolm X. I mean, this is where all the flashy. Brooklyn. I mean, Jay-Z, Big Daddy K, I mean, Queens. I mean, you got 50 Cent, Ja Rule, Run DMC, all the way from Farmers, to Hollis. I mean, Staten Island, Strong Island, Wu-Tang. I mean, it's like, and then there's Washington Heights, where you have where it's not necessarily always mentioned, but it holds a level of significance and strength that is undeniable and unerasable. It is a staple of what it means to be solid in the game.
I don't want to dry snitch, but I'm not gonna dry snitch because this is gonna sound crazy, so I refuse to dry snitch. But I will say that there were a lot of celebrities that came through the neighborhood to pick up stuff, and for me, even in my early childhood, being able to see people who have made it out come back in, and you see that they have the money, and you see that they have all these other things, you start to realize that there's more to life in the world, and it's crazy because I'm Jamaican American, so I'm not Dominican, so growing up amongst a lot of Dominicans, you kind of got to learn to pick up on that life as well, and it's really similar, obviously, to Jamaican lifestyle, except the language. But some of my most longest childhood, some of my longest friendships have been the people I grew up with still to this day, and I still maintain a friendship. And so Washington Heights was that place where, like I said, everyone had to come through as a rite of passage, especially in New York, when you talked about the drug culture. But now you got to flip it, right? Because that was such a prominent thing, there was not a lot of things to lean on in the neighborhood, right? So you're not, we talk about the life of of a black man in my position, you know, back in the day was, and people don't. I mean, this is the honest to God truth. When you grow up in certain neighborhoods, the only thing that'll get you out is music, playing ball, or selling drugs. Most of the people in my neighborhood didn't finish high school, or didn't even care to think about finishing high school, let alone getting a higher education in a college. I didn't even know what a college was until I actually left. When I was 16, I moved to Long Island, and I started learning about how important a higher education could be. Even though I didn't get a higher education, I still got to kind of see a lot of kids who were living in that type of neighborhood be able to go off to college and live a different lifestyle. So shout to anybody on the check-in from Wash Heights. Hello? Sorry.
Yeah, we're here. No, we're listening.
Yeah, we still here,
okay,
man. We
got
still
it. Sorry.
up, man.
No, you're coming.
Yeah.
No,
shout to everybody.
Dude, we got 2 hours. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Yeah, shout to anyone on the check-in from the Heights. But yeah, it's the culture's real, man, and it was an amazing place to grow up.
Now, when you think about it, Mims, because like Pat said, and like King and myself were talking, because we do our pre-interview production meeting. One thing about it is that people don't understand in terms of whether you are an artist starting off or an artist that is established, how difficult it is to really put it all together, let alone be successful with it. And you put it together and were hugely successful. I think what really stands the test of it, you were doing this before social media really became a thing, and damn sure before streaming really became a big thing. When you look at the music market of what was going on at that time, what was it like in terms of, going in with the records and reference? Like you said, there wasn't an emphasis on lyrical dexterity, but when you saw it open up, when did you realize that you had a hit on your hands? And then it turned from a hit to a phenomenon. So tell us about that. Take us back through that moment.
So I think for me, I knew that the record had a life because it wasn't the typical, obviously, New York record. So I couldn't bring it to New York to promote the record. I started actually my promotion of the record in the South, in Florida. And I remember one of the first stations I went to was a station in Tampa. There were a few other stations like Fort Myers, West Palm Beach that showed love. But the Tampa situation was unique to me because I remember going there in hopes to push in another record that was kind of, I would say, had that typical Dipset, Kanye West type of sped up vocal sound. It was a record I had called I Did You Wrong. And and I remember sitting with the music director of the station at the time trying to push, get her to support that record. And she kept it all the way real with me and was like, look, I can't, this is not really going to work at my station, but this other record, but I had this Swam Hot record literally in my back pocket, burned on a burned CD. For those who knew about that back in the day, as an artist, you leave the studio with your burned CD and you bring it around. Hopefully someone will pick it up. And she listened to it in the meeting, and she was like, I can bring this up to my mixers and see if they'll support it. And I think within a couple of days, I got a call saying that everyone loved the record and that they were going to throw it into the mix. What was unique about that for me was that I'm a New York artist. I'm going down to the South, and I'm getting love in the same areas that artists like Rick Ross were breaking out of, Chris Brown, T-Pain, because this was around that same time that all these artists started having these breakout records. And here I am as a New York artist getting this love. And I was able to take that love that I got from Florida, so shout to the whole state of Florida. I was able to take it and bring it back up to New York. And that's when I knew that I had a record that was worthy on my hands. And then obviously every record label in the world was basically coming after me at that point to try to offer me a situation with them.
And that's crazy, Mills, because when you talk about
this was circa 2006.
Right, and it's crazy when you speak on that, Mills, because you said Fort Myers. That's also where Plies is from. So this is when Plies was really starting to get his buzz up.
Yep.
I don't know if you read Rick Ross's book, Hurricanes. If you have not, Great reads. Shout out to Ross, Whole Slab, a.k.a. Deuce Poppy, Jeter K, Ren 1400, everybody in MMG, Blue Money, Underwine, the whole crew. When you look at that situation, because Ross talks about it in his book about, now obviously your trajectory to success was not as long because you had already had a situation, of course, working with Chaclair. We're going to get into that about how that Canadian connection came because you also were rolling with Wyclef for a minute that facilitated that. We want you to tell that story as well. We're going to get back to that. Now, the situation, because Ross was talking about in his book about how long it took him 10 years. But when Khalid put on, and he even talked about the obstacles he went into at first, because Khalid originally told him that, a couple of the records he had heard really wasn't dope, and Ross was like, well, fuck you. I can say this because it's in his book.
Yep.
But he was like, you don't know what you're talking about. But then he brings him Hustlin', and Khalid plays Hustlin' for, I think, because it's a legend in Florida when Khalid drops it on the deck when he's still doing his radio DJing, and he plays Hustlin' for, I think, like 25 straight minutes. And Ross says he started crying because he's like, I knew at that moment my life had changed. We get to that point now where you're in a bidding war. For those that don't know, Mim, tell us what an actual bidding war with labels are like, because at this point you're an independent artist. And tell our audience today, even though it is not that far away, even 15 years moves like light speed. There's just so many layers to this, but we're going to start with this one. Yeah. Tell us what it was like in a bidding war, and then about how music is marketed today, because we still ain't got all this good shit, but we will. Start with that one. Let's start with that one.
I'm going to tell you how this works, right? So you can, back then, obviously coming out of New York, it was, I would network every single day. I mean, there wasn't a day that I wasn't on the streets networking, making sure that I got my name out. That allowed me to have meetings with every label you could imagine before the record ever came out. And I'm going to guarantee you that every single label I met with said no. Every single one of them. There was not a label back then that could say that they even attempted to sign me as an artist or offer me anything.
Right.
With the exception of maybe Raucous Records, and I never got a deal memo from them way back when. But there was interest there because I remember going up to meeting with the A&R up there at the time, and I even remember them mentioning that they were trying to sign Kanye. And it's crazy.
We know that story.
Fast forward. Yeah, and this is around 2004, 2005 for me. So fast forward only a year later, I had every single record label calling my management and my business partners trying to figure out what it took to offer me a deal, just because of what they saw that we did with radio. Now, I will say this, this is why I offer to a lot of artists, aspiring artists. I say to them that to me, a no, and it depends on what area you're in, is not the end, right? So like, right. Don't take that the wrong way, fellas out there, because if a woman tells you no, that means no. But when you get a lot of no's in business, right? When you get a lot of no's in business, it's your job basically to go out there and keep your head straight, keep doing what you got to do, and keep pushing. It doesn't matter what your music sounds like, because here's the reality: music is subjective. So somebody's gonna like it and someone isn't. Right? That's just the real. Someone's gonna say it's dope and someone's gonna say it's trash. But I know that most of the people who work at the record labels, they get it wrong a lot of times. I'm not saying they're bad people, but we got to stop putting a lot of the when people review music or they say, oh, this is hot, this is not. A lot of people go get in their feelings and they basically run off and be like, yo, I can't do this. Me, I've never thought that way. I always thought, I don't care if 100 million people don't like me. I just need 1 million people to rock with me. So back to the bidding war aspect. When the record started to play all throughout Florida, and I had one of the biggest records heating up in the state of Florida, and I was from New York, every single record label reached out at that time. And what happens then is that you're playing basically like this bidding war game. How much is it going to take to get a deal done with you? You know, how much is it going to take? And we're giving everybody the numbers. I decided to do a deal with Capitol Records, EMI at the time, which I thought at the time was an amazing deal. But I would later then find out that you know, my partnership with them wasn't necessarily appreciated. So I want to clarify something for a lot of people out there, and this is probably the most important part of this discussion. A lot of people think that I came in the business and I couldn't come back out. The reality is that I decided to leave on my own. Right. I didn't come into music. You know, I basically decided to leave on my own merit. I wasn't forced. I basically got to a point with dealing with the business that I wasn't having fun in the music, in the space anymore. So I decided to back away and walk away from everything. It's almost like that basketball player who becomes rookie of the year, then wins a championship, and then the next season realizes that all of the mechanics that it took to get there wasn't what they expected. So they decided to just leave the league altogether. And that's probably a part of my story that no one sees because I'm not as vocal about it as I would want to be. But I've been behind the scenes since then. I've traveled the world since then. And, you know, what I realized with record labels or with any of the big corporations, I mean, we could talk about, you know, the pharmaceutical industry. We could talk about politics. What happens is once you get inside of this system, you start to lose a lot of the control and the creative control that you thought you once had. So imagine being in a system where at one point in time you recorded your whole life. You were recording on your own. You were doing things on your own. And now imagine being told by someone who doesn't do music that you need to do more street records or you need to be a little bit more meaner in your photos and things of that nature. And it's like, to me, everyone wants to create someone, you know, everyone at a label has an opinion on how they want to create someone. So if you have 5 departments at a record label, if you have the sales department, promotions department, and let's just say the executives, and they all have a different opinion of how an artist should look, you're going to have a problem internally because everyone's going to be giving their input instead of doing what I feel like they should do, which is let an artist be who they are, release their music, and then give them the opportunity to glow and shine. You know, for me, early on in my career, I learned that as much as I love the journey that I've been through, it wasn't enough money in the world that was worth my sanity and my ability to actually just want to be creative for fun. When I first started and I was broke and I didn't have and I say broke as a mentality, but financially I didn't have money in the bank, I had the most fun in my career because there was no expectation. So when I made records like This Is Why I'm Hot, I really made them from a genuine place of like whatever that mood was, I didn't care. And then when the money starts to get involved, you start to realize that you lose the control because everybody's banking on you to make the next big thing. And you know, to me, that's a little bit too much for me from a creative standpoint. I'd rather just fall back. I respect every artist in the business. You know, I respect Ross, 50, you know, Eminem, Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, because the resilience that they have to get where they are, just from the little bit that I endured, I realized that you got to have a certain amount of resilience. But I also like to say that, and this is not I feel like me mentally, I'm the strongest of them all because I had the ability to walk away from everything. Kind of like how Dave Chappelle did when he walked away from the Netflix $50 million deal and everybody thought he lost his mind. And, I feel the same.
Comedy Central, just a respectful editor.
Comedy Central.
Because Mims, because what you're saying, because we got so much to touch on. Oh, my God. You just hit so many jewels. Because what you were saying earlier in terms of the 3 parts of the industry, this also goes back to what you were saying about and what we were going to say, because we know you're just diplomatic and just so polite, so we're just going to say it. A lot of these labels sign people to these positions who don't know anything about the culture. So their decisions are not rooted in a situation of what is best and is going to be intuitive for preserving it, rather than they're looking at it as how it can be monetized. And at the end, monetization is not a bad thing as long as, if you're going to be ethical, it does right by it. What you said also, too, about how you wanted to maintain a certain level of standard of strategy in terms of how you wanted to move, morality, and peace. Those are elements that are essential, because no matter what the genre, no matter the individual, no matter the color of their skin, we see a lot of artists, once they are introduced to a certain level of access in celebrity life, a lot of them self-destruct from it because they are not ready for what comes with it. And a lot of times we see this in social media now, because you did all this before social media. So you did this from like you said, a very genuine place of creative intellect and drive. There was no capping with your authenticity. It was all organic, and it was not generic. And what we see now are so many people who are trying to expressway themselves to fame, but end up executing themselves in their career long term.
There you go.
You know, when you think about, thank you. When you think about everything from the beginning of when your travels came with Wyclef, and we want you to speak on that for a second. What was the introduction to fame in terms of being around the people in the industry and really seeing from the beginning of how it worked, rolling with somebody who was established, to when ultimately you would take the reins of having your own career and then seeing it, in terms of people you would end up meeting, how business is conducted, just everything. Please go.
Yeah, it's funny because what I'm going to say sounds real crazy. I know Clef, but I was never. I don't know why, and I want to say that there might be a conspiracy as to why a lot of the stuff that was written about me wasn't true. So like, knowing Clef is cool, but I never had a relationship with him where we were on the road together.
Right.
I've met him in
we want that to be clarified.
You know, Yeah. I met him in passing, and you know, really, I mean, he's probably the epitome of hip hop, in my opinion, from all facets. So, one thing I will say about myself is that I've never had a cosign, right? So I never had an artist genuinely step out and be like, "Yo, I rock MIMs." You know, MIMs is my man. I have friendships within the industry, but most of my friendships exist outside of it. I never had a DJ to support me in my career. I've never had, there was no, let me say a DJ to support me. I've had DJs support me, but there was not one DJ in particular that I was signed to that would basically help cultivate my career. I had to basically work my relationships with every DJ, go through the politics with every person in every city and state and even country. And remember, if you rewind back to that time in music, if you could name for me one artist that didn't have a cosign, I will sit here and wait.
Oh no, there weren't
from that era.
Because everybody did have a cosign. Everybody had one.
Everybody at that time. If you didn't know someone who, whether it was a DJ or anyone, like I literally came in the game. I had a team of people that believed in me, but they were not anyone that anyone knew. They didn't pull strings in the music industry. We basically bogarted our way in. We built our support from a genuine aspect, and then people rocked with me then. And even after the fact, there were no artists that jumped in and was like, "Yo, this is what this kid did was incredible." There was probably one person, I will say, who said the kindest thing about me away from the interviews, which was Jermaine Dupri. And Jermaine Dupri was basically like, he figured it out. That was his words. Like, being a New York artist and having the South be so prominent at the time, his words to me were, "You figured it out." And he basically gave me kudos for that. Other than him, everybody else basically tried to diss me. or come at me in the music or come at me in an article, or say things about me, and I knew none of these people. Like I didn't see them, and I didn't know them as friends. Like maybe we would see each other and everybody, and that's why I always said the music industry is like the WWF, right? What you see happen on TV or in all these places, this is all stuff that is staged that people want you to see. But these humans are not like this in real life, you know. And I'm not basically trying to pull no one's G card or say that these people aren't in the street. There's a lot of real MCs in the business, and there's a lot of real people that come from the street. But those who started diving into that whole WWF type of mind frame, I never saw that in real life. So I feel like it was only something that they did so that the public could look at them that way. And that's important, right? I'm gonna tell you why that's important to me, because that ultimately, when I was getting into little, PR situations with certain artists, I didn't even know that it existed or where it came from. Like I would literally wake up one day and someone would have said something bad about me in an article or on radio, and what I realized is that my father passed away when I was 11, so I wasn't raised by a man. He wasn't in my life to begin with. I was raised by my mother, but it's weird for me to look at another man, and I've always tried to be a man in my life, no matter what it is I go through. I've always taught that the two things you have as a man is your word and your balls, right? So
Tony Montana,
that played there you go. That played an intricate part of me leaving as well and not wanting to be involved, because I realized that everybody in the industry was fake. Like everybody's persona was made up, and that was also depressing. You grow up sometimes with these people being your heroes, and then you start to realize that they're not who you really thought they would be. It's like, you know what? Nah, I don't want no parts of this.
There's an old saying too, man. There's an old saying: you never want to meet your heroes because they're gonna disappoint you.
There you go.
And it's one thing. It's one thing about it, Mims. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No. I'm listening. I'm rocking with you.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, you never know, man, because I could really resonate to that experience, because I came in the game myself with no interviewing and stuff, and I was like, yo, get to interview this guy. I bought his album. I know if I bought his album, he gonna go ahead and jump and do an interview with me. I had to go through all the politics. Someone wanted a ridiculous amount of payola. And I was like, I thought we was coach. I thought we was like, I'll go to your shows, and I bought your records. I posted it on the gram. Like, what is this?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a different.
Yeah, it's different. One thing about it, and King is going to be so modest in that, because King saw a lane for what he started with Off the Cuff, where he knew from his experience as a journalist and a lifelong, hip-hop head, he figured, he could get in here and do it. And here we are, almost at 500 shows 7 years later. I've been part of it for the past 5, and he's been doing it 7 years. Shout out to the co-hosts we've had past in the past, and present. Like Pat's still with us. Shout out to Sandman, Lady Chinchilla, Sky Grid, all them. So it's like we've seen in person people, when shows were coming, him and myself, and we've met people that we've had great experiences with. For me personally, DJ K Slay was a good friend of mine. I just remember when me and Slay would be on the phone and just, chop it up about things. Of course, shout out to Red Cafe, Jeezy and Ace. You know what I'm saying? Smith and
Wesson. Shout out to Red Cafe, because I would say before you go on, I would say this.
Go ahead.
One of my best relationships in the music industry is with him, because I've met Red. I mean, we've known each other for multiple years now. He's never changed. Same thing, but shout out to Red for sure. I just spoke to him a couple days ago too. So
him, rest in peace, Bullet. Shout out to Bundy Crumb, Whole Shakedown, Building 19. crew, you know who you are out there. Yeah, Red is a solid guy, man. And I can hit up his manager. I can hit up Bundy on the phone, and if Bundy ain't busy, he's gonna pick up the phone. Shout to him, Mularu, you know, Trey Davison, all the shakedown, man. You know, DJ Cutie, you know, overseas, you know, that is one dude I can say. Red has always looked out when we've seen each other, you know, not in Virginia, you know, and we've hung out a couple times.
Yeah.
Every time I saw Red, it was always love, man. You know, much respect. So when you, so when you go through all of everything, Mills, because like you said, when you look at how you said it's WWF, when you look at what's going on today in social media now, because social media was in its nascent phases, as corny as he can be sometimes, and we only say this because of shit he has done publicly, we got to give Soulja Boy his props, you know, for what he did in terms of realizing the potential where the internet can be, and for the hard work he put in, because for all the shenanigans he put out there, I respect hard work, and that boy earned his place doing what he did, getting there. You know, he did some stuff along the way he shouldn't have done, but yeah. Go ahead,
say this.
Please.
I met Soulja Boy in 2007.
Okay.
He was really young at the time, and if you really look back at my record, I always tell this story. There was Sean Kingston, myself, and then Soulja Boy came shortly after. And I feel like, you know, music aside, you know, whether you like his music or not, music aside, he was able to see, he did something I couldn't do, which was when the backlash started coming and I started realizing that the music industry was WWF, I was just like, you know what, I'm cool. Like, I'll make my money doing something else, and I'll just keep music for myself. But he was able to continue, and even while people everyone in the world had something to say about him, he was still able to continue and do his thing. And I respect that about him. You know, I can't say that I know much of all his music, but there's definitely records that I rock out to. But just him as a person and what he's been able to do as a person is what I respect more than anything, because he took a lot of that stuff on his shoulder. The same stuff that I took, he took it and you know and still takes it to this day. So at the end of the day, I mean, I 100% agree with what you're saying, and you know, and respect him for that, for his ability to do that.
You know, and the one thing about it too, because when I said it's corny, it's not. My thing is, you know, it's not to call them on the carpet or diss them, because as journalists, our job is to just call the story as we see it. We don't have an agenda to bang on anybody, but we do like the idea of people when they come in the game understanding their place. And I think with him, for a lot of levels of it, because I will never, nor will King, my brother, we will never take away from the success that he has had, but we also have seen the sides of it from things that he has done and said publicly about, you know, it's like, dude, you know, you have the money, but it's like you also have to understand where the market is for where you're at. And this is not just him. This is for a lot of artists when what we call the music stops, in terms of where, you know, and it's just about understanding what's going on with it. And then that's when the shenanigans start. Well, like you said, when things may change for you, you always maintain a level of self-respect and integrity, and you didn't go to crazy tactics to maintain relevancy. You understood your place. We're not going to get in your pockets, but we know you did damn well financially. That's a given. So it's something where you understood that I'm okay transitioning or looking to something where what can I do that will write the next chapter in my book of life, that when it's finally closed, that I can say I did this, this, and this, and my existence professionally was not predicated in one aspect of what people thought I should be, but what I wanted to achieve for myself.
You know what I did? You know what was an eye opener for me? And this is the honest truth: is that is that money stopped becoming the most important thing to me, and time started to become the most important commodity to me. And when that transition happened for me in life, and it happened earlier on for me, what I realized is that trying to play, what they say, a fool, when you see two fools arguing from a distance, you can't tell who is who. So when you start to realize that you're playing in a fool's game with a bunch of fools, and that's no disrespect to anyone who takes disrespect behind it, then you must not know what the industry is like. But I realized that wasn't important to me. A lot of people, everybody wants to pride themselves on having money, and I get it. Money is definitely something that is a necessity in as it relates to survival in our economy and things of that nature. So I never want to paint the picture like it's not a good thing to have it, but it's not the most important thing to have. So when you start to really understand why time is more important, then really your means of making money changes, right? So you're not making money, you're not chasing money, you're making money. You want to make money enough so that it creates more time for you to do things that other than chasing money. So I know that's a whole lot for someone to take in, but for anyone listening, once you decide to change your mindset on that side, you'll see things a little bit differently. And I do now.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's break it back to what you said, Mims, about what you said about Dave Chappelle when he was on Oprah, when he talked about that situation with Comedy Central about the $50 million. And because we want you to speak on this as well from what Dave was alluding to at that time, and wasn't even alluding to where we're seeing the game at now. And I know we're going to get some people might get their feathers ruffled a little bit, but this is off the cuff. We are respectfully going to touch on points. Anyway, I digress. When he talked with Oprah about the situation, and one of the situations that was going on about a skit they wanted him to do wearing the dress, and he didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And they kept telling him, well, it's going to be so funny. And he's like, no, I'm not wearing a dress. He said they tried like 3 times, and then when he said on the 3rd time, like an emphatic, fuck no, I'm not doing it. That's when they said, oh, well, we got another skit. And Jay's like, that's when I realized they had something planned the entire time where I wouldn't have to do it, but they wanted to see if I would do it. And he talked about how with the skit where he talked about the Pixie skit, there was really, he just said, and Dave is sharper than 2 ninjas with Gensu's doing a master chef. And even he was, but he was like, with that comedy routine, he was uncomfortable with it, with what they proposed, because he said he saw the white people on set laughing a little bit too hard. And he was like, then it made him uncomfortable. And he was like, but he's like, $50 million. He was like, yeah, they were offering me $50 million, but this is what that told me. $50 million means that they had a lot of control over what I was going to do, and that's when I chose to walk away from it.
Yeah, and then the other side that yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No. Please. Go ahead.
I was saying that the uniqueness about that is that if they make $50 million, if they paid him $50 million, how much would they have made off of him for embarrassing himself, or at least in his eyes doing what he thought was embarrassing? And I think that's a lot of the time people don't have the ability to make those decisions because they look at what they can do with the money after the fact. And I'm not mad at the people who do. I'm not mad if you say, hey, I'm going to take this $50 million and I'm going to disappear somewhere and live my life. But some of us don't look at it that way. Some of us look at it like, you know what, I would rather have a peace of mind than to actually destroy my peace of mind, because I'm not going to be able to deal with that after the fact. But I salute Dave Chappelle for sure on making that decision, and he is one of the if not probably top 3 comedians of all time in my opinion. I put him really high on that list. I mean, that's the nigga. He's probably number 1 on my list.
After what he did with the closer. After that closer joint, when he made the joke about the Jews on the moon and he didn't get fried for it, I was like, he's gone to Jedi level.
That's like the comedic genius that he was, man. Like, I couldn't flip that right there. And I'm gonna tell you, for myself. I would have been got canceled and thrown off.
I'm like, he dropped.
You know what I love about that though?
Go ahead.
No, I'm because we should touch on cancel culture, man. Because I really hate cancel culture. Right? It's like the worst thing that ever happened to human existence. And here's the reason why I hate. I hate it for both sides. It's not a black or white thing. One, the reason why I respect Dave Chappelle so much is because he can't be canceled. When you tell the world you can't cancel me, you cannot be canceled. It doesn't matter. And I feel the same way. There's nothing you can do to me in life to tell me you're going to cancel me. Because if I decide to say something in public and I decide the next day to retract it because I didn't mean it, I could care less what you feel about it. We all humans, we make mistakes. The issue I have with the cancel culture is that we tend to cancel people and not take into account that we live in a world where so many people deal with mental illnesses that now the cancel culture is making it cool to really basically say, I don't care how you feel. If you say something stupid, you got to go. And I realized that that's not human nature. Humans make mistakes. I remember when I was young, and I put it out there for myself, when I was young, a group of my friends and myself decided that we wanted to rob, people, like doing stupid things. And we went through with it. Not all the time, but sometimes we did things that we didn't want to do. And with having no rhyme or reason of doing it or even understanding, we just thought it was a cool thing to do because, that was the time and age and era. So if you tell me that as a young child that I'm going to be canceled for doing something stupid, and I can't have an existence going, I don't believe in that. Everybody makes mistakes in life. Some people's mistakes are really stupid. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the cancel culture thing to me is just weird. And if people are sitting on the internet praying that the world cancels someone because they make a mistake, then you really got to do a little bit of self-reflection and say to yourself, who are you as a person? Because the last I checked, you can't throw stones. Everybody basically lives in a world of sin, so you can't throw stones at the next man or throw stones at the house.
The one thing about it, and what you said, Mims, is a perfect anecdotal, because the fact is that we all are fragile in our own existence, in the art of living. And shout out to Chuck Schuldiner, rest in peace, godly technical death metal guitarist of Death and Control Denied. For those that have not checked out that album, The Fragile Art of Existence, that he did with Control Denied, unbelievable album of technical metal musicianship. When we look at it from what it is, we all are transparent at some level because people are going to see us. And in that aspect of it, we are without fault. As they say, let the man without sin cast the first stone and then let a boulder roll down on him, because the avalanche is going to start. Now, when you think about it, people in cancel culture, this is the issue that King and myself have fundamental problems with on the side of, number one, we got people, this is where, and we're going to go there to a degree with some of these quote-unquote pseudo-scholars and hoteps, yes, I said it on air, hoteps, who think that they know so much and get out there trying to be anti-establishment and anti-attitude of saying, but the fact is they say things that have no academic merit, no validation, but they're going to try to pass it off as true. Then they get mad when everybody gets pissed off at them for saying, you were ignorant as fuck for saying it. But their thing is, I'm speaking my mind. I'm like, well, yeah, you got a right to speak your mind. You even got a right to be wrong. You just can't say what you want to say and not expect everybody to not have an opinion. Conversely speaking, when we get into cancel culture, it comes to the precipice of censoring. And I do not believe in any aspect of it because, it's like people really don't understand. The movie Demolition Man, shout out to Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone. Beneath all the action and the wildness, that movie had a deep message for those that really understood it.
Yeah.
It's about one person who is going to dictate to the populace what things should be. And like Simon Phoenix was saying to that guy, you can't take away the people's right to be assholes. You know, who is one person to tell everybody else how they're going to live? Dennis Leary's character, you know, Edgar Friendly, he was saying, you know, when John Spartan and him meet face to face and Friendly tells him, I'm a guy there, the establishment is scared of me because I'm scared to speak up, and I'm not going to play their game. Now, there's a difference between speaking up for what is right and you're going to speak on real injustice, and then you want to say something for a soundbite and then get butthurt when you're wrong as hell and people get mad at you for it, like a certain artist going through some, you know, marital problems right now. And this is where it goes further because you have people that want to co-sign that nonsense, trying to say, well, you know, he's his creative spirit and he's just expanding and speaking his mind. I'm like, listen, a broken clock can be wrong twice a day in terms of time, but there is never a time to be foolish all the time. You should never make that a point of your day just to go out and say something, you know, and then you don't have people telling you that maybe this isn't a good idea. And the problem is with social media today is that it's given too many people who are uneducated, who are misinformed, and outright just have an agenda because their thing is, well, you know, they're speaking for the people. Bullshit. You just want a platform to where you can feel a sense of celebrity that you wouldn't have gotten in any other capacity. And the bar's set really low in terms of how you're going to bench press less than a skinny worm on anorexic, you know, trying to pass yourself off as this intellectual heavyweight. This type of pseudo-academia, false philosophy to me is cancerous because it enables people, it emboldens them to try to speak on things they do not have knowledge about. And people don't understand the fundamental elements. If you don't know about something, like you said, Mills, when two people are talking and arguing and then you never know which one is the fool, it's foolish to speak on something you have no knowledge about to begin with and try to pass it off as facts.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Hey, man, and I want to say this to you, too, man. I was like, how did that collaboration with KRS and Redman happen?
Yeah, so, I mean, it wasn't a traditional collaboration. What happened was I was actually working with a producer by the name of Chris Pensett, and we were working on, you know, at the time, I don't know if I was working on the second album or just coming off the release of the second album. And I went to a studio to do some work on some music, and in his vault he had this record with KRS-One and Redman, and he kept asking me to jump on the record, and I'm like, nah, I'm not just gonna jump on the record. I said, you gotta, you know, I'll write the verse and I'll do the record, but you gotta obviously clear it with them to see if that makes sense, you know, because those are two rap legends, you know. Shout to Redman, shout to KRS-One, and I did the verse, and you know, he brought it to them and said, hey, this is a record that I want to release, and I want to put MIMs on it, and they gave the blessings, and the rest is history. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I wish I would have gotten to be able to work with them in the actual studio, or at least take that lie and say that I did, but I didn't. But it's still great to be on a record with two generations of hip hop. Or two artists that I basically grew up listening to. Shout out to them.
When you look at Redman in terms of how he has pretty much gone the independent route over the years, you know, because he just, and Reggie Noble, met him and Redman, him and Method Man some years back when they came here in Virginia to do a show. Great guys, absolute stand-up dudes. Two of the funniest guys you will ever meet, especially when they're funny. Definitely, they're downright hilarious when you get them together.
Yep.
And when you look at how Red has gone on to pretty much do his independent route, and to look at KRS over 35 years and still going in music, what does that say about the culture in terms of two stalwarts and how they should be revered, respected, received, and recognized for their contributions?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a dope story that a lot of people know. Early on in my career, I actually toured with Method Man. I was the national opening act for a tour that he had, I want to say like circa 2003 into 2004. And I was a young, wet behind the ears performer. So when I say like young and wet behind the ears, I didn't have any stage presence. I didn't know what the art of performing was. But going on tour with him, and I think Redman did a couple of the dates as well. And I didn't perform with Method Man. I opened up for him. But being able to watch him perform for a few of those shows, it taught me a lot about artistry, and it taught me a lot about entertainment. And I will say, hands down, I mean, when you say great, I will say this. I've watched. There's only two artists that I would say, or maybe three, but I would say two, that I've watched have just as good a show as Method Man and even Redman, and one of them is DMX, and
rest in peace.
And the other is Busta Rhymes.
Yes.
So I feel like watching Method Man perform, you know, it was a part of the performance where they would actually crowd surf, but they would stand on people's shoulders while they were walking around rapping. And I watched this every night, you know, for about 3 months of being on tour. It taught me a lot about even my show and and the way I approach entertainment. So I mean, back to what you say about them as people, you know, I mean, I can go back even further. We had Ed Lover and Dr. Dre when they gave us Who's the Man. But after Ed Lover and Dr. Dre, the cat that you saw on big screen was Method Man. I mean, you had Kid and Play too. I got to give them props, right? But when Method and Red did it, it was more of a they did it at the time where they were the most successful, and they crossed into film. And I know Method Man kind of still lives in the film space, in the film world. I mean, you know how talented you have to be as a human to be able to do all of these things.
And he's a legitimate actor. Like, it's not play. Like, Uncle Mess can really act.
Absolutely. So you have to be extremely talented, and there's very few people that are that talented. I would say LL, Jamie Foxx, Method Man. Damn, I mean, there's you know, very few, man, because it's Queen Latifah. Oh yes, I mean she's probably number one on that list. You know, that have the ability to cross over. I mean, we love Will Smith for Fresh Prince. We love Will Smith for the movies, but I feel like, you know, when we talk about a Queen Latifah, you talk about Method Man, you talk about, I mean, there's something about them that was still special musically, and then they crossed in and did something movie-wise, and just created this whole new vertical, man. So shout to them. And back to what you're saying, like, I have such a master for the people who came before me, the artists who built it. That's what showed me that you don't just have to be musically inclined, that you have the ability to take your same hustle and determination and use it in other worlds, man. So that's really what got me into technology in the space that I'm in now.
Yeah, tell us about that. In terms of course, Chameleonaire. Yeah, Chameleonaire, he started his tech thing, I think. I want to say, King, did Slim Thug get into it too, or is it just Chameleonaire that we know of who has gotten into that technological aspect? I think, yeah, but I know Chameleonaire for a fact. He's in Silicon Valley now. Yeah, go ahead. Tell us how you found the transition.
No, Chameleonaire is doing his thing. I think for me, I actually approached it differently than a lot of other artists. A lot of them do investments in the space, and if they basically invest in the right idea, that return on investment comes back. I'm a little bit different, right? So what I did was I created a startup. I created a tech company. I worked on creating technology. So I kind of learned the game a different way, right? I put my money where my mouth was, and, you know, we call it bootstrapping in the tech space, where you take your own money and invest in something that you create, right, as opposed to someone else creating. And, you know, I've learned so much in my times in this industry, and I've met so many cool people. The one thing that I had to do for anyone listening too, like, you know, if you feel like in life you're being limited to a certain lifestyle, like you know, if you're a ball player and people say shut up and dribble like they did to LeBron, or if you're a musician, and you know, and all the people want to do is hear your music. There is a way for you to actually switch verticals and switch and do something else, but you have to humble yourself, right? So what I did was I didn't go into the industry using my celebrity as a way to get me on. I pretty much went in and, you know, I started from the ground. You know, like I went to events, I went to certain tech conventions, and I started handing out flyers about things that I was doing. I mean, and this is in the middle of me being a touring artist and making money as a touring artist, having to say to myself, you know what, instead of me going on that tour, I'm going to go check out CES in Las Vegas. So I'm going to go here, and I'm basically going to hand out business cards and flyers to introduce myself into the space. And I feel like if you can humble yourself in any industry from the ground up and really, really learn it from the inside out, you have the ability to make make a dent. So that's really how I transitioned into technology. I deal a lot more with tech in the music space, and then I've invested a lot in the blockchain space as well, in crypto space, and now we have this new thing called metaverse, NFTs in the metaverse. So I also live within the space, but I also am connected within that space as well on some of the ventures that I'm working with.
Definitely, and you know this is the next wave. Shout out to Sherrod G of Minority Golf Association. We had him on a couple months ago. Great guy, you know, from Flint, you know, Detroit. Flint, Michigan. My bad, Michigan. I don't want to get all y'all mad at me in the 313 and all that. But yeah, Flint, Michigan. He talked about that in terms of, you know, he talked about his African Americans, you know, with the blockchain, NFTs, all of that, how we got to get on it because this is something we might end up missing if we don't really understand how this works. You know, and we're looking at where it was, because when we think about over 20 years ago when the .com thing really started to take off, you know, when we look at what was happening with one of the first, Yahoo.com, which was a class project. It's known as the Stanford Class Project in 1994, which would eventually become Yahoo. When I think for business class, that was their project. That was their final. They had to come up with a business when it became Yahoo. And, of course, you know, we look at Bill Gates and what he did with Microsoft. And then Paul, you know, and, of course, you know, I mean, you look at Paul Allen. You know, you look at Steve Jobs. You know, I mean, you look at Jeff Bezos with Amazon. I mean, it's something that has been going back as long as it was, but you always have to find that market in terms of where you can make that entry point. When you really got into it, where did you find your place in terms of thinking that this was something that you could do, and not only do, but really excel at?
I mean, it leads back to entertainment, right? So one thing that I realized, and I still do, is that, you know, and I don't want to make a deeper conversation than it needs to be, but
please,
you know, one of the problems in the black community is that we don't really have an industry that we can claim ownership over. What I realized is that even in my music tenure, that we're so quick to basically sell our ownership, right? And that's probably a really more of an important word than we even get to know. Because if you look at some other industries, and you look at some other, certain industries, and you look at certain races and ethnicities, you start to realize that they have ownership in things, right? So I could name any other ethnicity and tell you what they own or what they're basically prevalent in. You know, if you talk about, you know, you talk about the Indian community, and they're basically prevalent in the IT space and in medicine. And this is not a stereotype. This is basically a compliment to certain people. You talk about, you know,
because all of our company outsourcing is going to them.
Absolutely. You talk about Jewish people in their community, and you see that they're, heavily involved in real estate and heavily involved in jewelry, and probably a plethora of other things.
Right.
You talk about so many different communities. Koreans are big in beauty and skincare. So you ask the question, what do black people own? And a lot of people, when I ask them that question, they start getting puzzled. And they realize that there really is no ownership, because everything we've had, we've sold. Just to get a piece of a financial success, not realizing that the IP is more important. The person who owns the building in Manhattan is worth more than the person who sold it to them 50, 60 years ago. So what I like to do, in especially as it relates to technology, is I'm trying to become that barrier between the corporation and the entertainers, and trying to convince the entertainers to stop selling their IP or stop giving it up. And that could come in the form of anything. If you're a musician and you're signing yourself to a record label to where they own your royalties and masters for the rest of your life, then what does it matter? What do you have to hand down to your kids when it's all said and done? Jeff Bezos, like you mentioned, and Elon Musk, two of the richest men in the world, their families, their last names are set for forever. And you'll see generational wealth for years to come with them. Elon Musk comes from generational wealth. Jeff Bezos, the same thing. He comes from generational wealth. The reason why Amazon was able to stay afloat because he got a loan. His parents were able to bail him out of bankruptcy and keep his business afloat while he figured it out. So my point to say is that what I realize that black people own is we own entertainment. So let's stop selling it. Let's stop selling what we own, and let's actually take ownership in it, and let that be our business that people pay us for. And I think with blockchain technology, we have the opportunity to do that, and with technology in general. So here's what I say: Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all of these apps that basically at some point needed an entertainer to use to basically solidify that was the place to be. Let's create our own, and I'm not saying let's create a black Instagram. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying let's create a black Twitter. I'm saying let's create something that everyone uses, but it's owned by a black person. That's creating generational wealth. I challenge, and I don't care if you are the biggest mogul in the world. I really want to know what industries black people own 100% of. I remember when I wanted to open up, I forgot what it was, but what business it was. But I remember someone saying, "Oh man, you're gonna go have to speak to the Italians, or you're gonna have to go speak to the Jews when you do that." And in my mind, I'm like, the only reason why that would be is because they have ownership of everything. So it's a sad reality for us, but I'm hoping that I could be somewhat of a voice that echoes that in the people, and when they sit down and sign that next deal, that they realize that instead of signing it for a bunch of money, sign it to create something, own some equity in something, try to become a majority owner in something, because that's another key word. We see what's going on with the NFL and the NBA, but there are very little majority black-owned businesses, very little. So, I'm just really trying to have a seat at the table to convince people different to operate differently, and I think that's where I fit the best in this blockchain crypto side. Is you have a lot of international money being poured in to a space that needs influencers and entertainers to make it hot. Now's our time to gain ownership. There's no time like now for us to be able to gain ownership in something. So don't sell ourselves short.
And Sherrod was telling us the same thing, about that, because he's somebody we're working with too, helping, he's helping us expand our brand as well. Mills, when you think about this, because what you said is essential. This is essential listening. This is imperative lesson, because we have to understand the power of entrepreneurship. Now, one thing about it is,
you have your head on straight in terms of understanding what it takes. Because the problem with some people who try to get into business is that they don't have the humility or the acumen to understand what it really entails in terms of what goes into it. Because everybody's thing is, there are a lot of stands in terms of the boss. Everybody wants to be the boss, but nobody wants to do the work. And then everybody wants to be the boss until they see who eats last. Because you got to take care of everybody around you to ensure your brand. When you're looking at the record industry, and you're looking at now how a lot of these artists are signing these 360 deals, where the label is getting a piece of everything that they're doing, where back in the day, when you were doing this, whatever you made independently, whether touring or merch or what have you, that was yours. And now a lot of these artists, they're basically getting in deals that, like you said, they aren't getting anything really out of it. How important is it from a perspective of not only understanding the tech business of being knowledgeable going in, but in music, bringing it back to that artists understand their worth and not selling themselves out for something that, like you said, they're not even going to own down the line?
I mean, if anything, if I can go back and warn everyone or even myself about I don't want to say the predatory contracts that a lot of these artists are signing, but it is the truth, right? These contracts aren't in benefit to any artist. Most of the time the contracts are signed because it benefits the label. They collect the money. And even when you have the best contract in the world, whoever collects the money pretty much holds the gold. So if you ask me, that's probably single-handedly the most important thing that I would say to new aspiring artists is be different. Don't always accept what you think is, because here's the problem, right?
Go ahead.
We got a 400-year. I would like to say we got a 400-year. They got a 400-year head start, right? The rest of the world as compared to black people. I'm not saying it always has to be a black and white thing. There's a lot of white people who live below the poverty line, and obviously there's a lot of black people who live below the poverty line. So this is not necessarily just a white or black thing. It's more of a rich or poor thing. But unfortunately, the majority of us of our black people live below the poverty line. But the reality is, be different, right? Because if someone offers you $1 million, and this is the real common sense that I tell people, especially the younger artists.
Right.
If they offer you $1 million, how much money do you think they're going to make off you? And it's not like it doesn't exist. Look at Master P. Master P did, in 99 or 98, I'm not sure what year it was. He
made $56 million in one year.
He did it. Yeah, he did an 80-20 split with the label. He did a packaging distribution deal, so he used them to distribute his music, and then he basically he did everything else, put up the money for marketing and stuff like that. Now fast forward, here's why Master P can be done 20 times over nowadays, because there is no such thing as distribution. Distribution is the click of a button. So when it comes to distributing music, you don't pay to have a tractor trailer bring your CD from one state to the next or one country to the next. So that's really where the expense of needing the record label to do that was. Everything else you can do on your own. And if anyone tells me differently, they're bugging. Now, I've watched artists get deals, and they go into record labels, and they think that their life is going to change. And then when they sit with the person or their project manager or the A&R or whomever, and they realize they don't even know what they're talking about or they don't know what they're doing, then they start to bite their fingernails and say, "Damn, why did I do this?" And this happens way more than an artist being successful. So the amount of artists that you see that are successful is probably 2%, and the other 98% are stuck under these predatory contracts and these contracts that don't benefit them. So I like to paint a real picture for the people out there, because it seems to me like when they watch TV, what happens is you see the young brothers now with massive jewelry around their necks. Everybody's driving a Lamborghini. Everybody's, driving a Rolls Royce, and it appears that they're making money. And I can't say whether they are or they aren't. There's definitely some young brothers in this business that are doing really well for themselves, but that's only 2%. The other 2%, the other 98% of them are struggling to try to figure it out. So let's change that narrative, and the only way to do that is by having ownership in IP. And then when those who don't know what IP is, intellectual property. So basically, my music. If I can own my music can be passed down generation to generation. It could build wealth for if my record continues to play the way it is, and even if it increases, it'll build wealth forever. And we need to own that. So,
yeah,
I mean,
and that's something that's important, because when we look at a lot of these artists, as we were saying, a lot of these artists are relying on shenanigans to get on, but they really don't understand that, the shenanigans they may sell records for a short time, but the reality is that if you don't have your business together, you're just a flash in the pan. The sensationalism when you came in the game, Mims, was not as it is now. Now you're seeing dudes wearing purses, dresses, all types of stuff. And we're not here to.
Damn, it's double weird now.
Yeah, and it's like we're not here to talk about. Yeah, we're not here to lambaste anybody's sexuality. We said it's on off the cuff. Yeah, the direction. It's just we're just seeing a lot of weird activities that were. What do you think from the artist's perspective? Because that's you at your heart, and you've added on to those academics in addition to being an artist. What's going on in the game in terms of where we're seeing certain directional pivots that have kind of gone?
I mean, it's easy. It's easy to see that there's no genuinity. There's very little genuinity, right? So most people who do things are doing it just to get a reaction out of the world. So I feel like there's nothing wrong with a person being expressive, right? I mean, Prince, his music is iconic, and he was probably one of the most expressive musicians from the past. So you're right. We're not here to talk about, that side of the coin, but I think what you start to realize is when people start to do things just to get a reaction out of people, and then they use that as a means to promoting themselves or their music or whatever, and it may not necessarily be genuine. I mean, I feel like it's corny. I'll take a use your vocabulary in a sense, man. It becomes corny because what everyone's doing in a sense is they're basically watering down the culture, just to gain just to have monetary gain. And I mean, most people are not going to. You could ask someone if they care, they may say they don't, and I know that to me that's pure ignorance. Not everybody has to be the white knight trying to save the culture or do things for that. Once again, I'm not saying, because there was a debate in the past whether or not, Nas will talk about whether or not hip hop is dead. Like, I'm not using that language on purpose, right? Because we're not talking about the actual process of creating music. We're talking about the culture of our people, right? And what people look at when they see us, and that's what's being diminished, right? So, it's tough, man. I mean, I cringe, like, sometimes even me, like when I listen to certain things I've said in my music in the past, I get a little cringy because if you talk about, as a culture, if we talk about all of the name brands that we drop and, the things that we show love to, and then we basically convince other people to go out and buy, but we have no ownership in this at all, no stake in it at all. It's almost like you don't even realize like how much of a damage you're doing. So not everybody's going to have it figured out, and I'm not saying everyone has to have the approach that they're Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or anything for that matter. Some people just want to live, and that's fine. But damn, like I said, I just want us to have ownership. That's it. So all the shenanigans that people do, like it just becomes corny and overwhelming at a point in time, to the point where I don't even like social media. I don't use it. I'm not like an avid user of it. I don't care if I have 5 followers or 5 million. Like, that doesn't really concern me, because I need a certain amount of peace of mind. But because you're right, there's too much noise.
Yeah, and that's a great point, man, that you made, because a lot of times, from that era to where it was then to where it is now, there's been a heightened emphasis on it in terms of, like they say, doing it for the gram and clout chasing on the internet. And we're seeing King and myself, we're very subtle guys. We love social media for it enabling us to interview people like yourself and so many others we've had the honor and pleasure of having on the show. But we also are people who understand it as humans, the emotional intelligence that we have to have, that we live our life off of social media. We have stuff going on in terms of, and the thing is, to see everybody on social media, it becomes overwhelming and such, because to see everybody online, everybody's rich, everybody ain't got no worries, everybody's taking exotic vacations, nobody's broke, everybody's the biggest dope boy, everybody's the biggest player, all the girls up there got, like, all the dudes wanting them, but the reality is that it becomes a shallow pool that people jump into and don't understand that there's no depth, and they end up, not only, you can't drown in a shallow pool, but you can damn sure crack your head open because you dived in without understanding it. And when you see how it has exploded over the years in terms of where are we as a people in terms of what we put out there, not just in music, but just certain things in terms of, I'm gonna be that guy. I love comedy. But some comedy I see people do online is lowbrow. It's not anything that's really hilarious. It's just like, it's almost like somebody just got up there and just decided they want to do something dumb because they want everybody to look at them and didn't think about, this isn't like watching the late, great Bernie Mac. Yeah.
There's no effort in it, man. Like, anybody could be a comedian within their own safety network or their computer or their house. They ain't got to go on stage and get booed off stage.
Exactly.
If they start clowning, you can just delete the post and post something else. But you go out there on stage, like T.I. doing, he found out the hard way.
Yeah.
Not a game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Technology is I would say this. I always tell people, like, technology is a gift and a curse. Even for myself, right? So I said one of the things that Steve Jobs did when he invented the iPod, and then eventually the iPhone, and then iTunes, is that he single-handedly changed the music industry, right? So he basically created the price point for music. So, whereas back then, labels decided how much music cost, how much a CD was going to cost. If you walked into Best Buy or Walmart or, Virgin Megastore at the time, I don't know, so many different outlets that don't exist now.
I missed the Virgin Megastore. Oh, my God, man.
Yeah, you never know what you were going to pay for a CD. You might walk in there and the CD would be $19.99 or it'd be $9.99, depending on what you were buying, and what kind of deals that the corporate stores cut with the record label. But when Steve Jobs came in, he said, you know what? Forget all that. If you want to buy just a single off this Jay-Z album, I'm going to give you the ability to do it. if you want to buy the whole album or if you want to buy just 5 songs off it, I'm going to give you the ability to do it. So I think that when you talk about, and I guess I can ask this question back then till now, has there been any artist, because I have probably one on my list that has created a classic album post iPod era, right? Because remember, a lot of the classic albums that I deem classic, I would say, I'll put him in that light, and I can't say that he hasn't, but I guess what I was trying to get at was,
Go ahead.
We were forced to listen to a whole album back then. We bought the whole album, we listened to it front and back. Even nowadays, you get to skip around when you hear something. I was going to say J. Cole.
Okay. Yeah.
But but even when you say Chance, to me, like you're probably doing the same thing I'm doing, which is you're measuring the amount of skills an artist has, as opposed to actually saying this one body of work is a classic album. Because no one talks about any classic albums post the iPod era, and I don't remember one at all, or at least not one that comes up in topic post iPod era. And I'm talking about from a new artist, right? Because you could say that Nas had another classic album when he came out with I don't know what album he just released.
Kings of Thieves 1 or 2 or Magic, because all 3 were phenomenal.
Yeah, but Nas was also pre the digital era, so he has had time to establish himself as a brand. I'm trying to think of an artist who came, like a brand new artist who came post digital, who has the ability to say that they have a classic album accolade.
I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna say Griselda, because WWCD to me was just unbelievable. Shout out to Benny Westside and Conway. That album was just, oh my God. Which is also perfect.
Back to town.
Which is also a perfect segue. A perfect segue too, Milms, because you spoke on that. How do you see it now in terms of physical copies still being viable as opposed to digital? Because going online, I don't think it's like what happened before the pandemic hit. We didn't realize how good we had it with some of those albums being out because, dog, I was looking at some of those albums, and we talk about this on like every other damn show. Dude, do you realize how much some of those albums are going for now in terms of like the Bloods and the Crips banging on wax? The banging on wax online on eBay is going for like, the CD is going for like $80 to $100. The double LP is going for like $120. I mean, the original, dude, Illmatic, the cassette is going for all our listeners out there, I ain't playing. That somebody has on eBay fully packaged mint for like $2,000.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm in the world of NFTs now, right? So I get it. And I also used to collect baseball cards back in the day, so I understand where the mind of the collector goes. It's, there's something about having something physically tangible, even though NFTs defy that. It's something about having something physically tangible that is going to start to pop up. What I've started to see is that vinyl has actually become more prevalent, right? So especially if you created your career post vinyl era. So like if you're a new artist and you were never a part of the whole vinyl era, now it may be the time for you to create vinyl to give out to people or sell to people because it's a collectible. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that comes from. I get it. People want to have a collection of something, and why not a Nas Illmatic, original Nas Illmatic tape? I don't know if a person will ever open the plastic or listen to it, but to hold it and have it as a collection, that sounds dope. 20 years from now, that might be, that might be dope. I might have to look into that myself.
Yeah, I mean,
I
because
can't
I was
imagine how
actually
much that Thriller costs. I can't imagine how much that Thriller vinyl costs right now.
It's not going to be that expensive. It's not going to be that expensive because that album is in such wide circulation. I could be wrong.
It's a rarity, like rarity.
It's the rarity when you're looking at how the market, like Mills was saying earlier, is like how somebody can dictate it. But scarcity usually is what drives value, especially if it's considered a nostalgic piece. When you look at the Purple tape, released August 1st, 1995, built for Cuban Links, for those that know, Raekwon and Ghostface, that album was such a game changer in terms of hip hop that, and of course, it was purple. Like, you know, if you know the story, like with Raekwon, he wanted to use green for it because that was his favorite color, but they said Loud said they couldn't do green, but they said we can do purple, and he was like, okay. But he's like, his thing was, I wanted my shit to stand out from everybody else, which it did, and it became not only a classic rap album, but that purple made it iconic in terms of rarity. I found out because there was another version, the gray version, because I guess the purple went out in limited numbers. Because, I mean, the purple, if you go on eBay, that thing's worth like, somebody's got that up there for like close to $10,000, the actual shrink wrap mint copy. But even the purple, even the gray tape is worth like $5,000 online. It's just one of those things now. It's crazy in terms of how the demand, because I guess possibly maybe there weren't that many in circulation. Some tapes are worth more than others, like The Late Great Big, Ready to Die is the original cassette is going for like $75 to $100 on eBay.
Because of the sample clearances too. Because a lot of those the remasters, they don't have the original samples like with Machine Gun Funk. They don't have the original Machine Gun Funk on a lot of those crop copies.
Which is why the CD, the original press from 1994, for those listening out there, if you have that original press from 1994 of Ready to Die and the cassette on CD, it's the same thing, but those original samples, like King said, because in 2004, the remastered version, it doesn't sound the same as the original. I have the original and the I have the original 94 press and the remaster from 2004, and I listen to the 94 press religiously. It's just like King said, that's just the authentic one. You know, when you see the game today in hip hop, Mills, in terms of it, how do you feel in terms of direction it's heading? Where you see guys like Griselda, of course, you know, and of course guys like Jay-Z moving into business. Griselda's still doing it in terms of bringing that sound back. 50 Cent transitioning into television. E40 doing his ventures with the wines. And damn it, he needs to come out with a damn book and stop playing. E40's been messing with us for goddamn 20 years. He needs to drop the damn book. Yeah, I'm a huge E40 fan. Yeah. I just want Uncle 40 to drop the book. To see Dr. Dre with go ahead, please.
No, I mean I think that this is where I think we learn, right? So like in the beginning, a lot of the ventures you're talking about, and I'm hoping, in the beginning, these ventures were when artists are approached by these corporations to do these ventures, they usually offer them a check and maybe some sort of residual income, like some sort of royalties, but really minimal. So they position these deals almost similar to the way the music industry is positioned, or the music business artist is positioned. And I think as time grows, you're going to start to see people step out the box to retain more ownership of something that they do. And I think that once again, this helps build generational wealth, and it also helps educate the newest school of artists how to get deals done and make it work. I started watching that show Winning Time on HBO.
But
I know
Lakers.
There's mixed reviews on it about the Lakers, and what I realized is from that time in the NBA till now, if you look at the way contracts are being structured, you got to give kudos to people like LeBron James, or Kevin Durant, and their ability to really, really be on top of and have the control in their deals. Now, the next step after this would be for them to create their own league, right? So shout to Ice Cube with the Big Three.
The Big Three.
And the creation of a league. So I think as time progresses and we become a little bit more business savvy, we start to realize that there's levels, right? And the first level was, let me just get in and get this quick check. The next level is, partial ownership, and then the next level would be primary ownership, and then eventually like full ownership. Entertainment is a really, I've traveled to Korea, I've traveled to Japan, and it's crazy because I remember sitting in the middle of a street in Korea, and I'm crossing the street, and I'm the only black man crossing the street, and there's all these Koreans, and you almost feel like you're in another world because you start looking around and you're saying, man, I'm thousands of miles away from where I came from, and I'm sitting here amongst people that look nothing like me. And then you go out to a nightclub and you realize that they dance like us, they rap like us, they sing like us, they dress like us, and everything they do is influenced by our culture. So entertainment is probably, to me, one of the most, it's profitable, obviously. It's been a profitable thing for years, but if we decided that we wanted to take it over and own it, imagine how far we can go with it, with that being our industry.
Man, MIMs, on that note, dude, this has been sensational. Yeah, man. One of the most influential in terms of a song that inspired generations that will live on forever, and we had you with us to talk business, music, life, and what you're still going to achieve. Dude, it goes without saying you're welcome back anytime on the show. We appreciate this so much. Thank you. Is there tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yeah, I'm not a complete ghost, but I think at MIMs Life is mostly all my handles. I do get back to people. I'm not the most socially driven, but shout to anyone listening if you want to hit me up at MIMs Life. Yeah, man, thank you guys for the platform. I appreciate it, and congratulations on the many years of allowing people this stability, right? Just before you close out, I just want to say that during my time in the music industry, radio stations stopped letting artists come up and do interviews because they realized that it wasn't good for their numbers and their ratings. So a lot of the interviews got cut short. And I remember as a kid growing up listening to Angie Martinez, the Funk Flex, interview people, Red Alert interview people when they came up to the station. And that was such a pivotal thing for me. So for you guys to have a platform that allows artists to do it, man, thank you. And keep keeping the culture alive and pushing it forward. So I appreciate it.
It's people like you that inspire us to do what we do. And, you're somebody who has a place in hip-hop history that's indelible and impeccable and incredible, and not in that order. So we are always appreciative because it's something, we have our voice doing it, but it's your voice in it and so many others that makes it a collaboration of a celebration of communication. We thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Definitely. And on that note, music is my savior, Mr. MIMs himself, the legend.
big shout to Pat, man. I hope you get better, man. Thank you for making this connection happen.
Definitely.
Pat, man, definitely be well. Be safe and be well, man.
Definitely.
Yeah, man. And the moves too, man.
Say that again. Sorry, I missed that one.
Yeah, I said we gonna keep in tune with your future moves, and anytime you have any product you want to talk about or promote, you're definitely welcome to come aboard, man.
Yo, fellas, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and I will hold you to that for sure.
Definitely.
Always, man. Be safe, brother.
Definitely. King, take us out of here.
All right, on that note, we up out of here. We'll catch y'all same time, same channel. Holla.
And we're out. Peace. God bless.